Welcome back with another banger. It's the React Files. Hope you're having a good night. If you haven't already, please take a second
just to smash that like, subscribe, ring that notification bell,
just to make sure the algorithm knows what's up. So let's get straight to it.
There are currently videos all over Twitter right now with what appears to be, what they're claiming to be, a meteor. They're even saying that they believe they know where it landed, but for something to be that big and that bright to land without making a sound, I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying it's not, but I'm saying that is really, really bright. I've never seen a meteor that bright before. And wasn't that the same color as the Devil's Comet that was present during the eclipse? This is around supposedly where it fell. Look at this though, look at the lens flare. There's something round. I'm not trying to wear a tinfoil hat right now, I'm just saying there's something round and pointing like a craft of some sort. I don't know. What do y'all think? It must just be the skeptic in me, but to me this seems like something more. What do y'all think it is? Do y'all believe in meteors? Let me know in the comments.
Please tell me you seen the blue meteor that happened in Spain or Portugal last night. This had a spiritual meaning. Remember, they've been trying to warn us about something supernatural taking place. Just 2 days ago, the Vatican released an article speaking about supernatural events happening from the sky. I know meteors is nothing new. We've been having it all the time, but this one is pretty different. The reason why it's so different is because the Vatican was trying to warn people and let people know that something's going to happen from the sky. And something did happen from the sky. But do you know what the meteorite really mean? They lied to the people and said meteors is just some big ass rock that's coming from outer space. That's not true. Meteors are actually falling stars. It was not no regular meteorite. It was a falling star or a shooting star, and it was landing on this planet. Someone is inside of that meteor. This meteor was blue because it was a spiritual meaning behind what was really taking place. Something just landed from the heavens and came back to this planet. Colors is connected to our spiritual growth. Anytime you see the color blue, it represents the heavens above. So this was a deeper message, letting people know something is now on this planet that came from a higher place in the heavens. So a couple days ago, King Charles just did a portrait of him covered in all blood, or the hellfire. By the way, this cartoon predicted King Charles' portrait. The Vatican just came out with a big article speaking about all kinds of supernatural things taking place. Something landed on this planet in that meteor last night, and it's going to change everything.
Shout out to organic like us. Are meteors falling stars? Because yeah, it was blue. It had like a MCU type animation to it. Was the Vatican trying to warn us? Because they said they didn't want to speak on it. At the same time, having a whole press conference and all, they pretty much said they wasn't going to get in the way or in the middle or say what is what. But the way Organic got it sounded like Doomsday just landed from DC Comics. Like, yo.
So this guy has one dream in his life. He basically wants to create the next Star Wars. Now his name is Lin, and Lin is actually a billionaire. He got rich creating online and mobile games in China, with his company's biggest game being the Game of Thrones game Winter is Coming. But one day, Lin decides he wants his gaming company to expand into making movies. So he goes out and he buys the rights to this sci-fi novel that's selling really well, called Three Body Problem. There's like a whole trilogy of them. They call it the Three Body series. But Lin and his company, he buys the rights, and he has a big vision for these novels. He wants to turn them into a massive massive global IP and basically make them like the next Star Wars, with blockbuster movies and spin-off TV shows and spin-off video games. So he starts a new subsidiary company to handle this three-body problem material. And to run that company, he appoints this guy, Zhu. Zhu's a lawyer, and he's kind of an eccentric dude. So, for the next 3 years, Lin and his company, they try to adopt these books into a series of 6 movies. And he takes meeting after meeting after meeting. But, unfortunately, Hollywood just isn't quite feeling his idea. And old Zhu isn't doing a very good job running his subsidiary company for him. He's allegedly blowing through a lot of the company's money with very little to show for it. So Lin's three-body problem movies fail to get the green light in Hollywood. And this just crushes his dream of making the next Star Wars type global franchise. And Lin just isn't happy, and it looks like this thing is never gonna take off. So Lin actually has a working relationship with these two showrunners, the guys responsible for ruining Game of Thrones, the TV series. Because remember, Lin's company produced the Game of Thrones online video game. So they have a connection. So Lin asked the two showrunners, Benioff and Weiss, he asked them to come on board the three-body problem, and they do. And eventually they all get a deal with Netflix to turn the three-body problem not into a bunch of movies, but into a long-form drama series. Which for Lin, a Netflix series is a great place to start in his dream to turn this IP into the next big Star Wars type global franchise. So they take the deal, and finally things are starting to go right for Lin. And so he goes to Zhu, who's doing a terrible job, and he demotes him from head of that subsidiary company, and he cuts his pay significantly. Because, f him. So Lin bumps him down and ends up replacing him with another executive. And Zhu still works there, he's just not at the top anymore. And because of this, Zhu is pissed. And that's when he starts plotting his revenge. Now, as I said before, Zhu is an eccentric guy, but he does have good taste in TV because one of his favorite shows is Breaking Bad. And this show greatly inspires him in coming up with his revenge plot. So in true Walter White style, Zhu, he finds a place slightly outside of the city and he starts building a secret lab. And he goes out and he gets a bunch of chemistry equipment and literally dozens of cell phones. And he uses these rogue cell phones to access the dark web. And there he buys a bunch of raw toxic materials because he's trying to mix the perfect poison. So every workday, Zhu shows up to his job and he handles the menial tasks that he's trusted with just like he's supposed to. But then, after work, he secretly heads out to his lab. And there, he experiments with mixture after mixture, trying to get his formula just right. And he ends up experimenting with over 100 different types of poison. He even goes and tests these potions out on random pets that he's able to find in the area. But after months of experimenting, Zhu finally has the poison just right. And he starts spiking beverages and bringing them into the office to share with his coworkers. He also poisons some probiotic pills and he gives them to Lin's secretary, who then gives them to Lin. And so far, Zhu's plan has worked perfectly, because after Lin takes the pills, he suddenly starts to feel sick. And he has no idea what's wrong. He just knows that he feels like shit. So they rush him to the hospital. And at the same time, 4 other employees at the company who drank Zhu's beverages, they also have to go to the hospital. And so the doctors, they look at all this, and they know Lin and his employees have all been poisoned. But they can't figure out by what. And so they run test after test, and they get nowhere trying to figure this out. And soon, the police get involved, and they investigate. And pretty quickly, Zhu becomes the prime suspect. So police question Zhu, and he denies being a part of any of it. But, based on what everyone has said, they're pretty sure it's him. And so they're basically like, just tell us what you poisoned them with so the doctors can save their lives. But Zhu still refuses to talk. He denies everything. And so 10 days go by, and he still hasn't admitted anything. But luckily, the 4 employees, they've started to recover. But not Lin. Lin, unfortunately, doesn't recover. In fact, Lin, he ends up dying right there in the hospital on Christmas Day. And he never got to see his dream of making Three Body Problem into this Star Wars type global franchise come true. And so anyway, police arrest Zhu, and they eventually find his secret lab outside of the city, and they charge him with murder and all kinds of stuff, and they throw him in jail while he waits on his trial. And almost 4 years later, Three Body Problem gets made into a show, and it finally premieres on Netflix, meaning the first step of Lin's dream is coming true. And the day after that premiere, Zhu's trial ends, and he's found guilty of poisoning his boss, and he gets sentenced not to life, but to death. And it's worth noting that in the opening credits of Three Body Problem, they still credit Lin as executive producer.
Great story. Shout outs to the real Ray William. Three Body Problem is a great series. I suggest you go check it out. I didn't know it had a backstory so deep. Very sad.
I know you guys heard about the storm in Houston, but you guys seen how it started? Check this out. Look how dark it gets, y'all. Look at this. Oh my goodness. It's like God just turned off the lights, y'all. It's like God literally turned off the lights. And this is what happened. Look at that. Just literally a few seconds later, this is the...
It doesn't even like come up as dark as it is. Oh, there we go. That's scary.
So that's really the darkness of it, y'all. Nobody was safe from this. Check this out. Look. So not only Houston was getting bad weather, but Dublin, Texas was also getting it, y'all. Look at this cow, this poor cow getting pummeled by hell. Now check out these huge buildings, y'all. Look at this. Look at what the hell did to these buildings. Torrential rain, non-stop rain. Look at what the hell did to these buildings, y'all. Look at that. Remember this cloud that was just seen in Texas 2 days ago, and then all this weather miraculously happened in Texas? They're just not abducting cows. Look at this, huh? Look at the cows. They're not just abducting cows. What y'all think this is? In Texas too. Crazy things going on around the world because we live in crazy times. This new age is calling for some crazy things happening. This video is strictly for entertainment purposes only. I am only raising awareness to interesting situations during this interesting times. But let me know what you guys think about this video. Like, comment, and share for more videos like this. Thank you for tuning to my frequency. And let's get this shift, y'all. Peace in.
Shout out to Conscious Juice. Yo, that was some ill footage right there. I couldn't imagine being on an expressway and the sky just gets dark like that. Like the sun simulator just turned off. Shout out to all my people in Houston. Stay safe, stay strong. Prayers are with you.
It's kind of ghoulish.
It's kind of like a massacre or something here. It'd be really cool as like a, rock music cover album cover or something maybe.
King Charles's demonic portrait, even worse, upside down. As above, so below.
I think this is an absolutely beautiful portrait, and I've been thinking about it all week, and I wanted to talk about it. I also think this is a form of protest. One of the most interesting things about this portrait is the way that the British media has sort of been discussing it, because it's so very obvious what the meaning here is, but no one's allowed to say it. And I think this was a brilliant tactic of the artist to do it this way, because I love seeing someone get their karma in exactly the way that they sort of distribute it, right? Like, the British royal family operates in a very shadowy way, and none of the things that they do can be pinned down, and nothing in this portrait that's derogatory can actually really be pinned down. Okay, the first thing, I absolutely love portraiture. It's something I'm like secretly obsessed with. I have stared at hours of portraits. I used to draw out my own self-portrait every morning to see how it would change. An incredible exercise if you want to do it. But I don't think I've ever seen a face that has this well done, because it conveys so much emotion and it is so layered with the idea of who the person is. There is an evil here that's very apparent, a certain amusement, and a little sliver of kindness, which I find very interesting. There's compassion in the face as well. Now, anyways, back to the overall. Obviously, everyone's saying he looks like he's in hell. He looks like he's on fire. Absolutely. But I want to get into the details of this. First of all, there's a light spot by his head over on that one side. Do you see that? And where the butterfly is coming in. To me, this infers that there is another place behind him where he could be, but he chooses to be right here in this space. Also, all of the insignia on his chest, you can no longer see what it signifies because it's all muted in this red, which I think was a tactic to sort of downplay the accomplishments of this man, actually. Because insignia is sort of by rank, right? And you can't tell the rank of any of these things, and you don't know what they're for. It's like Boy Scout patches, but there's nothing to decipher what they are. And it sort of brings up the question subtly of how important these things are and what his accomplishments have been. Like, right, executing thousands of people in small countries, plundering entire societies. Like, are these good badges to have or bad ones? And I think that the covering of this to wash kind of like makes a joke of those, you know, medals. I saw a video of one point where he was sitting with the artist when he opens this portrait, which you need to see the video. I'll put a little piece of it at the end. But a clip I could not find was when they were talking about this butterfly, and this butterfly is the only thing that saves this artist because it creates a plausible deniability about this entire portrait, right? Because the sort of evil elements are all there. The thing about this portrait too, if this was done hundreds of years ago, this artist would be sent to the tower and executed within a few days probably. Because this is clearly not a flattering rendering of this character. Also, one of my favorite books of all time is a book called A Picture of Dorian Gray. If you're not familiar with it, it's by Oscar Wilde. It's about a character who is really, really beautiful in his youth. He's charismatic, and this artist does a portrait of him in the, you know, the height of his beauty and his purity as well. But as this aristocratic man gets older, he becomes more and more violent and dangerous, and he starts committing the worst acts that a human can possibly do in their lives. And none of it shows on him physically in reality. The portrait itself takes on the caricature of him. So somewhere in an attic, that portrait is becoming a grotesque version of the soul that lives within it. And this portrait vaguely, somehow to me, references that book. I can't quite pin that down. Oh, and back to the point about them talking about this butterfly. I could not find the clip of him talking about it, but Charles says, oh, you know, sometimes you're in the garden and the butterfly will land on your shoulders. And I thought this was a very interesting moment. And like I said, I wish I could have found it for you. We all know animals are attracted to good energy, and this man has spent probably hundreds of hours in these like beautiful gardens where he's surrounded by butterflies, and for him to say they sometimes come up to you, like anyone who's sat in a butterfly garden knows that they always come up to you. So it almost revealed to me that he radiates this really dark energy. Also, when he pulls the cloak off of the portrait, he is very clearly shocked by it, although he has seen a preview of it before, which they talk about. Now this could be because he doesn't do anything himself. I've seen him get mad at people like not opening his pen cap for him, so that could be that. But to me, it's a very marked reaction of like, oh my gosh. Because it also looks like that Ghostbusters portrait. If you're not from the 80s, you won't know what I'm talking about. Very much this. All right, now to get too real about this butterfly. A butterfly is a symbol of beauty that's sort of fleeting, right? The ephemeral, but it's also an incredibly delicate animal. And though he looks like he's in hell, you would never imagine a butterfly could make it through hell. It's just the heat would like singe its wings, right? But this butterfly is coming in for a landing, and you can tell that it's going to land on him. And because of the symbol of this, I actually cried when I thought about this. I feel like this butterfly is humanity, and it's still going to land no matter what. No matter what it's put through, it is going to land. It has no fear. It's like a symbol of love to me. And what I was saying about the clip was Prince Charles seemed in the clip to be someone, when he talked about this butterfly, who was unloved. And he was also sort of suspiciously sussing out the artist, right? Because they're in front of a room full of people. He was just trying to find some sort of positive spot of this. I also want you to know he's carrying a sword there, something he has never had to use and will never have to use in his life. I also just love the way that he has mixed this sort of idea of passion and aggression and put this very gentle face with it. Because it's exactly what the British royal family is about, right? It's this intense violence just with this face of a placid self-satisfaction, I would call it. That's what it is. This face is very self-satisfied. And lastly, this really reminded me of Kendrick Lamar. There's a story about Kendrick Lamar like getting over on Apple, and I actually think I might make that like one of my next 2 or 3 videos. It's such a great revolutionary story in my opinion, and I think this portrait itself is a revolutionary act in my opinion. And mind you, this is his first portrait since his coronation, so it's almost a threat in a way of like, are you going to continue? And it's very much a place marker of like where we're at in the world, and I think it's so perfect. And I think this is something that's really valuable to the royal family because it marks a very distinct change in their position in the world, and that in fact like they are entering some sort of new era. Is it good for them or not? But he seems fine. He's not worried about it. Which I think is perfect. Oh, the Kendrick Lamar thing, sorry, I brought up because it's almost like the artist finessed the royal family, but he has done lots of their other portraits and none of them have been anything like this whatsoever. They've just been simple portraits of people in their basic environment. So this is very much a departure, and it's very clear that he wanted to send a message with this, in my opinion. And then we have this quote down here. He said it highlights the king's environmental causes. So he's highlighted the king's environmental causes, but covered everything else that he has here on his chest. So I think it's beautiful. And no, I do not have an art degree. I mean, you do not need one in this case. Also, I don't think you need to be academic to approach a work of art. It doesn't matter. The best part is that it's up to your interpretation. Yeah, no one in the British media will say exactly what that is, which I think is another great thing about this, is that no one would be able to speak about it because they also too would be implicated in seeing something bad about the king. So this is like such, oh, so good. Okay, thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
Shout out to Upwardly Mogul. That was a brilliant breakdown. And I agree, you don't have to be an academic just to have a passion for art. But yeah, man, I agree. This painter made a bold statement. You could tell when the king looked at it, it's like, my God.
I was up. I mean, I hit rock bottom. But I make no excuses. My behavior on that video is inexcusable. I take full responsibility for my actions in that video.
Breaking. Diddy took to Instagram to issue an apology. First time he's spoken since the shocking footage emerged last week. At this point, no amount of sorry will fix what he did. Seems like he's been on rock bottom for the past 30 years. Is he sorry that he did it? Or is he sorry that we've seen it? I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below.
On that breaking news coming out of Iran, and a helicopter carrying Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi suffering a hard landing. Now, these pictures are coming into us from state television. You can see it is very foggy, and from what we understand, this may well be rescue crews going out to the location where the hard landing has been reported. You can see there are people there on foot. There are rescue teams travelling by car on the road. Earlier, we reported and brought you news that 16 rescue teams are said to be heading out to the site. I'll remind you that that site is near a city called Jolfa. That is in the eastern Azerbaijan province, around 600 kilometers. That's 375 miles northwest of the Iranian capital, Tehran, no doubt where President Ibrahim Raisi was heading back to. Now, it's also bordering Azerbaijan, where President Ibrahim Raisi, and we have also learnt this hour, Foreign Minister Amir Abdullahian was on board. They had been attending a inauguration of a dam with Azerbaijan's president, and when they boarded that plane to return to Tehran. So these pictures seemingly from a very foggy Jolfa, or close to Jolfa, we're not clear on the exact location, seemingly rescue teams heading out by foot and by car.
If you've ever watched TV late at night in the 90s, you might remember seeing this guy, Don.
Our goal is to educate over 200 million.
Well, one day, Don was suddenly found unalived. Why? So back when Don had nothing, his whole goal was to do whatever it takes to get rich. So he goes and he starts a dating service. But it quickly fails. And 2 months later, he files for bankruptcy. Then he sets up a little credit repair company. And he charges people to help repair their credit. The problem with that is it's a scam. When people sign up with Don's company, he doesn't repair their credit. He only gives them information on how to sign up for new high-interest credit cards, which would potentially put them right back into debt. So his customers get pissed because this is fraud. So the state sues him, a judge orders him to pay his victims back, and his credit repair business is ultimately shut down. Oh, but that doesn't stop Don. He is determined to get rich. So he starts another grift, and that fails. Then he starts yet another where he's selling 1-900 numbers, psychic hotlines and shit like that. So he starts advertising these 900 numbers in the newspaper. And this is where he learns that advertising, whatever grift he's doing, is gonna be the key to make him rich. So he does this and he really starts pulling in big numbers. Allegedly over $50,000 a week. So he's finally getting rich. But for some reason, this just isn't enough for Don. And he wants to take it further and make more. And that is when he gets into the world of late night infomercials. And in these infomercials, Don always makes himself the star, and he starts off by selling those same 1-900 numbers.
Another way to make unheard of amounts of money is by getting your own 1-900 line.
But then he starts branching out into selling other garbage. But where he really gets traction is when he starts peddling people bullshit advice on how to get rich. Basically, he's selling get-rich-quick schemes. And this grift is definitely shady, but it's technically not illegal, so it really works for him. And he starts running these late-night infomercials all the time, like every night of the week. And soon he's selling his get-rich-quick schemes to hundreds of thousands of people. And suddenly, just like that, he and his business are allegedly worth over $40 million. Dude is killing it. And by this point, he's a household name. He even gets parodied on SNL, played by a young David Spade.
Hi, I'm Don Lapre, and I have a question for you.
And this success continues for years. And Don just keeps spending money, and he keeps trying to expand his businesses. But over time, it slowly stops working like it used to. It seems like people are getting tired of his get-rich-quick schemes, and so his profit margin starts to fall. And at one point, his company's losing $500,000 a week, and he owes a bunch of money on back taxes, and he loses really big on a real estate deal in Mexico. And then one day, womp womp, poor Don has lost so much money, he has to get up in front of all his employees and break the news to them. All his companies that were once worth over $40 million have now gone bankrupt. But, as we saw before, bankruptcy is not gonna stop Don. He is gonna grift whoever he can to get rich again. So a year later, he comes up with his biggest scam yet. And he partners up with this guy, Doug Grant. And Doug Grant is a whole other shady character with a whole other backstory. But Don and Doug Grant, they get together and they decide to set up a company selling, of all things, vitamins. And they call it
the greatest vitamin in the world.
But despite its name, it's basically just a standard multivitamin. But that doesn't matter. Don knows he can get on TV and he can sell it. And that's exactly what he does. He goes right back to making those late night TV infomercials, starring himself selling these vitamins.
Our goal is to educate over 200 million people.
But here's where the whole thing gets shady. Don's not just slanging these standard multivitamins. He's making all kinds of claims about exactly what they're able to do. Like he claims these vitamins can cure diabetes and they can cure heart disease and that they prevent cancer. Spoiler alert, they don't. And not only are they making false claims, but Don and Doug Grant turn the whole thing into a pyramid scheme because they start recruiting people to resell the vitamins for them, promising them huge commissions and that they'll all be rich and they can own their own business and all they have to do is pay several $100s up front to get started. Classic MLM nonsense. But over time, the pyramid in their pyramid scheme actually gets huge. From their infomercials, they recruit over 220,000 people to help resell these bullshit multivitamins. And this goes on for several years. And allegedly, Don and Doug Grant's company brings in over $52 million from doing this. So all this success and all this attention, this ends up going great for them. Until eventually the FDA catches on to the claims that Don and Doug Grant are making about these vitamins. And they don't like it. So they issue them several formal warnings to stop saying your vitamins do all this stuff that they don't really do. But Don and Doug Grant, they don't stop. They just keep on running these infomercials and they keep selling. So after years of FDA warnings and customer complaints, Don's cons finally catch up to him because their business gets raided. And eventually all their vitamin websites are taken down and their greatest vitamin in the world business ends up getting dissolved. And ultimately there's a 4-year-long investigation into Don's shady business model. And during this time, his business partner, Doug Grant, he actually goes to prison for unaliving his wife. So that's fun. But after all these investigations and all the evidence they have against him, Don knows he's going down for this vitamin scheme and that he'll likely spend a lot of time in prison. So one day he just vanishes. He just doesn't show up to his court date. He basically says F it and he goes on the run from the law. But unfortunately for him, about a day later, they find him hiding out in a local gym. So That didn't work. So they arrest Don and they throw him in jail, and he has to wait there until his trial starts. So there he is. He's facing 41 counts of fraud, and he's potentially looking at 25 years in prison if he gets convicted. And this scares the hell out of him. So one morning, 2 days before his trial, Don, he takes a razor blade and he unalives himself right there in his jail cell.
Shout outs to the real Ray William. I was not expecting that ending. Another great story. I remember that guy by the time we got to the vitamin part. I think the other ads, I was a little too young. So, if you remember that, let me know in the comments down below. That's crazy. Like, whoa. Remember back then, infomercials were big. Still are. But all that scamming caught up to him.
When first the gods were men on earth. Settling on the bond of heaven to earth, Anu decreed that the Anunnaki would come forth. They were forced to toil and do labor. Great indeed was the drudgery of the gods. The labor was heavy, the misery not befitting of gods. And the 7 great Anunnaki were not free of the burden, and the Ajigi Watchers were called down to do slave labor. And these giants roamed the earth in a time before men. Because the grain goddess had not arrived, because the cattle goddess had not been born. There was no cattle, and there was no grain. The Anunnaki were forced to eat plants like sheep and drink water from the ditches. They dug rivers and opened canals to be the life of the land. The Ajigi Watchers also dug rivers and opened canals. Then the Ajigi Watchers dug the Tigris River and the Euphrates. From the depths of the earth they brought forth springs of water, and the wells of life they established. They gathered up earth to build up all the mountains, and for years they toiled under such drudgery, and they had counted the years of their labors. For 10 cycles they suffered the toil night and day. For 20 cycles they suffered the toil night and day. For 30 cycles they suffered the toil night and day. For 40 cycles too much had they toiled night and day. The elder gods of the Anunnaki came together. With lots they decided the fate of the earth. To Anu, the father of the heavens, would remain in heaven. To Enlil, royal heir, was given the command. To Enki was given control of the waters of life. But in the lands, only endless toiling transpired. In the ditches, the Ajigi Watchers began murmuring against the work. Let us confront our foreman, they declared. He must take off our heavy burden upon us. Let us confront Enlil, the commander of the Anunnaki. Come, let us go to him and pull him from his chamber. So the Ajigi Watchers set their tools on fire, picked themselves up, and moved to the gate of Enlil. It was nighttime when his chamber was surrounded, but Enlil was not aware of their advances. The Ajigi approached the gate of Enlil. Nusku opened up his gate to the great chamber, and he took his weapons in as he stood. Enlil gathered with the assembly of the Anunnaki. Now then, Anu, your father in heaven, and also your counselor and general of the armies, Enlil, and your prefect goddess queen, Ninurta, and your lord on earth, Enki, have commanded me to ask you, who is the initiator of this battle? Who is the initiator of these hostilities toward this place? Who has declared a war and brought war upon the gate of Enlil? The Ajigi Watchers shouted out, every one of us among the Ajigi has declared war. We take our stand now against the endless excavations of land, and the excessive toils and slave labor has killed us. Our forced drudgery has been too heavy, the misery too much. Now every one of us Ajigi has resolved that a new covenant shall be made with Enlil. A grand assembly of Anunnaki was advised. A message was sent to Anu to come down from the heavens. The Lord Enki was brought to their presence, and the resolution came from Enki. To relieve the misery of the Ajigi, the race of humans would be created to be the workers.
And that's a wrap. Hope you enjoyed tonight's rabbit hole. Before we go, I want to give a huge shout out to Creole Lady on becoming the channel's newest member. Thank you, Creole Lady. I appreciate your support. Peace and blessings. If you haven't already, please take a second
just to smash that like subscribe, ring that notification bell.
Just to make sure the algorithm knows what's up. So what we gonna do, y'all? That's right. Run these numbers up. Thanks again. Until next time.